My boss said I'm not paid for suggestions, so I stopped suggesting and let the problems multiply. I walked into my manager's office at 9:15 a.m. on a Monday with a detailed report about a critical flaw in our production scheduling system. As senior operations coordinator at Precision Manufacturing, I'd spent 6 years understanding every process bottleneck in our facility. The scheduling software had a bug causing material shipments to arrive 3 days late consistently, creating delays affecting our largest client accounts. I documented the issue with screenshots, data analysis, and a proposed solution requiring about 4 hours of IT work. My manager, Greg Hoffman, barely looked up from his phone as I explained the situation, clearly annoyed that I was interrupting whatever he considered more important. Listen carefully because I'm only saying this once, Greg said, setting down his phone with obvious irritation. You're paid to coordinate schedules, not to play software engineer or business consultant. I don't need suggestions, recommendations, or your amateur analysis of systems designed by people with actual expertise. Your job description doesn't include identifying problems in other departments or proposing solutions. Stick to your assigned tasks and let the people who get paid for strategic thinking handle the big picture stuff. He waved his hand dismissively toward the door, indicating the meeting was over before I'd even finished explaining the financial impact. I left his office with a clear decision about how literally I would take his instructions. For 6 years, I'd been identifying and solving problems before they became crises, often working unpaid overtime to implement fixes that saved hundreds of thousands in potential losses. My personnel file contained commendations from 3 previous managers, but Greg had been brought in 6 months ago with a mandate to cut costs through strict adherence to job descriptions. His management philosophy involved keeping employees in rigid boxes regardless of their skills or the obvious value of their contributions. That afternoon, I noticed the same scheduling bug now affecting 2 additional client accounts with delivery deadlines approaching in 72 hours. Normally, I would have immediately escalated the issue while coordinating emergency workarounds. Instead, I made careful notes in my personal log documenting the exact time I observed the problem, the potential impact, and my decision not to report it per Greg's explicit instructions. I continued my assigned coordination tasks with meticulous attention to the narrow scope Greg had defined, carefully avoiding any actions that could be construed as suggestions beyond my pay grade. By Wednesday, the scheduling system had created a perfect storm, affecting 8 major accounts with combined value exceeding $2 million in quarterly revenue. Production managers scrambled to understand why critical materials weren't arriving. Shipping coordinators fielded angry calls from clients about late deliveries, and executives demanded explanations for the sudden collapse in operational efficiency. I watched the chaos unfold while continuing to perform my narrowly defined duties exactly as Greg specified. When the production manager asked if I'd noticed any scheduling irregularities, I politely explained that identifying system problems fell outside my assigned responsibilities, and he should direct that question to someone paid for strategic analysis. The crisis peaked on Friday when our largest client threatened to terminate their contract due to consistent delivery failures, citing the 3-week pattern of delays that had cost them significant production downtime. The CEO called an emergency meeting of all department heads to identify the root cause and assign accountability for what he called catastrophic failure in operational oversight. Greg attended confidently, completely unaware that the scheduling bug I'd tried to report on Monday had been the catalyst for everything that followed. When the IT director presented his analysis showing the software flaw and its timeline, Greg's face went pale as he realized the implications. Why wasn't this reported sooner? The CEO demanded, his voice carrying barely controlled anger. This bug has been active for 3 weeks, causing systematic delays that should have been obvious to anyone in operations coordination. Greg started explaining that his team had focused on core responsibilities, but the CEO cut him off. Operations coordination exists specifically to identify and escalate these exact problems. That's literally the purpose of the position. I sat quietly while Greg's explanation grew desperate, carefully not mentioning that I'd attempted to report the issue or that he'd explicitly forbidden such suggestions. After the meeting, I was called into the CEO's office along with Greg and the VP of operations. I've reviewed your personnel file, the CEO said, looking directly at me. 6 years of exemplary performance with multiple commendations for identifying and resolving system issues. What happened this time? I pulled out my personal log showing the Monday morning meeting with Greg, the detailed report I'd prepared, and his explicit instructions that I was not paid for suggestions beyond my narrow job description. I followed his directive to stick to my assigned tasks and let people paid for strategic thinking handle the big picture, I explained calmly. The CEO's expression shifted from confusion to cold anger as he read my documentation. Within 2 hours, Greg was terminated for gross negligence and creating a hostile environment that suppressed critical operational intelligence. I was promoted to operations manager with significant salary increase and explicit authority to identify and escalate system issues across all departments. The company implemented new protocols requiring managers to document any instances where they discourage employee initiative. Greg's final words as security escorted him out were desperate attempts to blame me for not going over his head, but the CEO had made clear that Greg's management philosophy created the disaster. Sometimes when someone tells you to stop making suggestions, the most effective response is taking them literally and letting the consequences speak for themselves.